Okay. Today is, what's the date? Is it the 4th? Okay.
Yeah, it's the 4th.
All right. So I'm back here in the Johnson's beautiful home in Oro Valley, Arizona. Today is the 4th of November, 2018. The next question that I have for you both. This is
why did you take us to the In-N-Out for dinner?
That was the number one
Our
question.
request.
It was the cheapest food, unfortunately.
You know, you're talk about budgets. You know. Okay.
You know, it's the very first question that I'm going to ask you is perhaps the most challenging question, and it's the one that's come up most frequently among students and employees and staff and year of service. And that is you know, we had an incredible, wonderful experience throughout Maxwell. Our experience was, for me, it was the highlight, essentially, of my life. But the question that we have, essentially, is why? Why did Maxwell, as successful as it was, come to an end? And were there specific factors? And now these factors could be anything from economic to staff, enrollment, changes possibly in the standards of the school, academics, leadership structure, the focus of the school, the housing, and how dorm parents and students were interacting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Do you want to start with, first of all
right,
the economics?
We can. Now, I strongly recommend, of course, that you contact Saeed Samimi and Irfan Vaizi, who were the two controllers that we started, of course, with Irfan Vaizi.
Yes.
And we had him for a few years, and he was extremely valuable and effective. And then he went into the business world because, as you know, all of the staff sacrificed financially just to be here and help support the school to the extent that they could. And then Saeed Samimi. And Saeed then continued the service to the school as the controller. And then when we're gone, he continued on. And then when the school was closed, the NSA asked him to be there and continue the process of closing down the school. And he was there for a number of months.
I'll definitely be interviewing him.
Yeah, well, good, because he would have the facts.
Yeah.
You know, and we want to make sure that the facts get in here, not hearsay as such and so on. So anyway, that's the economics, and the economics, as far as I know from my side.
Yes.
And LaNelma was in charge of recruitment, and if you wanted to say what condition were we in from a financial point of view on what you had to deal with?
Well, I can say for a fact, and Irfan Vaizi is the person to give you these numbers, because he was there, that when the school started, it was, and the letter that came was from the NSA that I read just today, 1.6 million is what they said, with the purchase price, with the upgrades, the furnitures, everything that happened to open the school. Irfan will tell you that 1.6 million was paid back in 3 years.
Wow.
3 years. However, Ray told you yesterday that David Haddon he purchased the school privately.
The biggest chunk of it, yeah.
It was, I'm not sure, but I think it was $450,000 for the school property. He purchased it for that, and later the NSAs said that they would like to have the school. He gifted that to the school. I'm not even sure that money was paid back to him from the school. And maybe Irfan can tell you that.
Sure.
I cannot.
Sure.
But I do know 1.6 million that they said was paid, and Irfan can confirm that, and he probably has all the papers and everything.
Sure.
But when we left, because the recruitment went very well, after 7 years, we were full to capacity to bring in that income in 3 years. We went from 40 students to 100 students to 160 students. That was boarding.
Yes.
And we continued to recruit locally, and we had 100 students from day students. So we had the income coming in.
Roughly 260 students at its peak in
Yes.
total, which was the capacity
The
of the school.
capacity of the school because of the sewage system and so on.
Yes.
And so I do know that the classes were full, the dorms were full. We had a waiting list, and Cheryl Nashadi was my assistant, and then Brigitte Eif, and they're the ones that we were just continually taking students, getting their files open. It didn't mean accepting them. We had a waiting list. People were applying to get into the school. I had one that was 2 years old.
A 2-year-old child.
A 2-year-old child. Because the parents knew in 10 years, I want my child to be in the school.
Wow.
So it was like that. And so we had a whole drawer full of children on the waiting list.
Yes.
And then we had our 160 boarding, and I didn't have records of the day students. That was in the principal's office. So financially, and with the endowment that Kanum and other donors gave to that, we had $1 million in the endowment, and Airfund can verify that. And we had scholarships, but we did not use the principal in the endowment. We used interest. So,
Right.
but the school, when Airfund left, he left because he thought the school was financially stable. He left about, I'm not sure, after 4 years or 5 years, I can't remember. But when we left when we thought not only was the school financially stable, but we thought the school itself was financially stable. I mean, stable in
The structure of
the
how
structure
it was
of
run.
how it was working.
Yes.
The residence was, kids were happy. Dorm parents were pleased with the progress of the school. Things had evolved and changed over the years. But a couple of years, as we were leaving, things were sort of starting to go a different direction.
Okay.
That the thinking was that perhaps we didn't need dorm parents to pay that salary or whatever. I'm not
Right.
sure. You can talk to people who were there at that time.
Right.
And find out how that changed, because I think that change was felt probably by the parents of the students, that it wasn't what they had thought it would be. It
Right.
wasn't the home environment with the dorm parents, and the vision that we had in the beginning began changing.
Yes.
And I think when the enrollment started dropping, that was probably one of the reasons why.
Right.
I'm only speculating.
Right. Right.
I wasn't there, but I can see, because of the interactions I had with parents
Yeah.
during those 7 years we were there, that they depended so much for their children to be safe and secure and happy in that living environment, and to have a beautiful program
Yeah.
of personal development and spiritual development that they had, as well as recreation and sports and all of those fun things as well. So that's the only thing I could think of. And
Right.
then when
Right.
the enrollments dropped, of course, the income dropped,
Yes.
and so it was like a cycle then.
Additionally, one of the things that had changed, and because, the former students of Maxwell are trying to take a look at and see what changed over time, because when we left in 1993, the school was absolutely on an upsurge. Standards were extraordinarily high. There appeared to be a wonderful consensus among community, means at large Baha'i community, as well as students and staff and year of service, that this is going extraordinarily well. We seem to be really great. Did you notice or feel that possibly through the years any other standards may have changed? Let me give you an example. Academic standards were if I'm not mistaken, were pretty high. Wasn't there an award that was given towards some of those years?
There were a few individual awards, but the recognition of good academic standards came from the British government, the BC government.
Yeah.
And I know that we were ranked in the top 10, private schools in British Columbia, and that formally is available for anyone that wants to look at it, of the rankings and things that the government puts out in the Ministry of Education every year. And that the year after we left, looking back, we had risen all the way up to at least being in the top 10. So
yeah,
I think we were moving in the right direction. What we're doing was working. So I don't think that academic really was, because the things that made Maxwell, if you had to filter it all down, it was not on the material side, like mathematics, it was on the spiritual side.
right.
Moral behavior, you see, and their attitudes and motivations. And so it was that type of collective effort of the school that they constantly were trying to encourage the raising of the standards of moral behavior. And that's where we shone. And I think that of course moved over to being have every individual having a standard of excellence for themselves.
Right.
They may not be the smartest in the class,
Right.
but they're striving, they're making progress, they're moving the right directions. And that was quite evident.
Yeah.
That it's internally, not something that is go to study hall,
Right.
but something that motivated them to want to excel.
So it was the standards of morality, of the spiritual foundation that the school and the vision that the school had established was very strong and imminent. I know that the not year of service, the dorm parents that were creating this incredible environment for us young people, us youth, so that we felt not only at home, but our parents felt very confident. I know that was one big shift. Another shift was the actual name of the school. When I graduated, it was called Maxwell International Baha'i School.
Yes.
A few years after I had graduated, at some point, when I looked on all the posters and whatnot, it just said Maxwell International School. Can you speak to that? I know that you weren't there during that time, so I know you're not directly involved with that, but do you think that may have had some kind of an influence on the standards of the school or the high ideals of morality? Did that have an impact on parents and the youth that were there?
The simple answer is yes. I think that it had an impact. To how much of an impact and why, I don't know for sure. I know that there were individuals that were involved with the school, and maybe they were students that had passed on to college and higher education and so on, that were raising the question, why, because that undermined, because you had something that said these are the Baha'i standards that we excel for, and now then we are in a national school, but it doesn't mention anything in the name that communicates anything. So
right.
I think that had an effect. Now, we ran into a problem in India where we were in service in a Baha'i school, and the school was established in 1945, so they've had a long time to develop things, but they also it was at a time when the government, the national government of India, okay, decided that you couldn't have a religious name in the name of the school.
I see. Okay.
They were very strict about changing your religion.
Yeah.
And even to the extent that we had a lot of students that were not Baha'is, but by the time they graduated, they considered themselves Baha'is, and many of them became very active Baha'is, in their communities. And to this day, I could name, hundreds of individuals that are active Baha'is around the world, but come out, the family is a Muslim family or they're a Hindu family,
Right.
but they consider themselves a Baha'i in spirit and the recognition that Baha'u'llah, was a manifestation of God. So, I think the name with the Baha'i attached to it gives it, that the Baha'is are actively involved in the school.
Yeah.
They're caretakers of the school.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't communicate that. It communicates that we're just like Brentwood School.
Right.
And so.
On some level, some of the students felt that our identity had been, on some level, lost.
Right.
Some of our students even described the word stolen. They were like, "Oh, our identity's stolen. What happened?" Right? It was identity theft.
And it may have been a move,
Right.
thinking academically,
Right.
economically,
Yes.
that if we take the Baha'i out, that you may be able to attract more students. I don't know whether that had a negative or a positive effect, but it did change.
Right.
Okay.
So some of the things that, and I know this is a very sensitive subject, and so with nothing but respect, I ask these questions. A few of the things that had changed in some of those years, the name, of course, had changed. The dorm parents were no longer in the same role and responsibility. That structure had changed. Is there anything, and possibly as a result of those sorts of things, enrollment had considerably reduced, which is, of course, the funding and the lifeblood of the financial portion of this. Is there anything else that you're aware of that you might be able to shed some light on for future generations that may have been one of the reasons why enrollment had reduced? Was there any major changes in standards, for example? Possibly. I'm making that up. Or anything else that you can think of?
Well, there are things, and LaNelma can add to this. The thing as far as this project, to gathering this data that maybe help people in the future to create a school, an educational experience that would address many of the things that schools have, the problems. I'm looking at the negative side because of the environment that is established. I mean, it's a challenge, in society and the world. But we over the years, during our tenure anyway, through how we manage the school and develop programs that were fluid in the sense of the pupil of the eye, for example.
Pupil of the eye.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Pupil of the eye. The
Pupil
group
of
for
the eye.
yeah.
And it was motivated by the Varners, who were dorm parents. A black and white marriage, and all the challenges that gave them as a family unit, and how they became so unified and dealt with things again through consultation and so on. Consultation brought to the school so it can work on its environment, and at the same time, the students just did marvelous advancements. And so,
right.
in fact, I've got a letter that just came out from the NSA 2 days ago,
Dated October 31st, 2018.
Yeah, and I'm just going to, there's 2 or 3 sentences here.
Yes.
It says, Baha'is are aware that the transforming power of the Baha'i revelation can most effectively be demonstrated in the field of service. And you know that we had a service program, and we considered these types of programs like the workshop,
Yes.
you know, and like the pupil of the eye, you know, are exploring the intersection between the efforts to advance the cause of social justice, community service, either created through their own experience, or enterprise, or already in place in neighborhoods where they are serving, tying the school as part of the community, the larger community, and how service, but you know what the Guardian says that Abdu'l-Baha, you know, has the name Abdu'l-Baha because he wanted to be recognized that service. He is the servant, you know.
Yes.
So this whole concept of service was just beginning to blossom, rather than isolated efforts and so on. That there was beginning to be an integration, a higher principle that is driving force of you. And many of the staff, in their efforts through their family groups and things of this nature, was attacking this most challenging issue. It says that service presents us with unparalleled opportunities to learn how to continually become better at it. What is it? Well, it is the relationship of diversity. And then this one last topic, or this one last sentence. Topics such as race relations, the empowerment of women, such endeavors may also include Baha'i-inspired programs or organizations that operate either autonomously or under the agency of Baha'i institutions such as schools, radio stations, health education projects, etc. And that's really what a big chunk of Maxwell was all about.
Right.
So talking about what did we feel, you know, that we could have done better or would like to encourage or whatever, you know, I think the whole service project, family unit, other workshop, all the things that we were already experimenting with, and they were moving forward and having social impacts. They're raising the questions, you know, of these questions, race relationship, for example.
And actively incorporating that into the structure of how the school itself functioned.
All right, can I insert a funny thing?
Sure.
Okay. So the workshop during the summer break or something, I'm not sure, they were doing an across Canada tour. And I don't know if you were there during that time, but and they stopped to do a program at the National Center, okay, National Baha'i Office. And so the workshop came on that day and time, and they had it all sort of an area that was no bigger than this area here for them to perform.
Right.
But when it was time, in walks, hands of the cause of God, Mr. Varga, okay, and they welcome him, take him, and put him right smack in the center of the front row, and everybody is just, you know, they're there. And so there was one of the workshop dances was called Pray.
Right.
Remember that one?
Sure do.
Okay. I don't remember. One of them is the kid from Greenspoon, I believe. Paul.
Not Paul.
Wasn't it?
I think the one that
Anyway,
does
3
that
students.
dance. Who is it does that dance? He's from Papua New Guinea, or
So anyway, there
okay.
were 3 individuals in this particular dance, 3 boys. And so they were doing this dance, and there was a lot of music and upbeat, you know, and the stop dancing, you know. And so they was very active, you know.
Sure.
And then this music, and it ends with pray, you know, the word pray. And in that pray, they go down into a prayer, you know, form and so on.
Right.
And after it was all over, you know, and I don't know if this is the first, it must have been the first dance that they did at this presentation. And then it was silent. Absolute, total silent. And then suddenly, Dr. Varga, you know, he stands up and starts kind of like this. Of course, everybody stands up. Because it was right on the edge. You know, is this sacrilegious, you know?
Right.
You know, and so, or is it reverent, and so on.
Right.
And so it kind of broke that thing right there, you know, for the communities across the nation.
Right.
You know, and Dr. Varga, I mentioned that later to him one time. I think it was at a Baha'i Studies conference in Montreal. He had come out of the session that was going on, and I was sitting outside the session, and 2 things happened right side by side. And he looks over at me and he says, "Come walk with me." So I said, "Okay." And
Sure.
get up, and he walks, and he walked a little bit fast, you know, he's walking. He says, "I don't know why people disrespect the Station of the Bob," you know. And he looks at me and says, "I don't either." You know, type thing. Anyway, so Dr. Vargas, and he's concerned because a lot of the presentations were talking about the manifestation of God, you know, the Bob, Baha'u'llah, and so on, as on the same level and equal from a scientific point. I don't need the word scientific, but the way that they treat him because of using Baha'u'llah said, you know, and then so and so said, like what they said is equal, you know, and so there was an issue there that was prominent in some of the presentations that he was not happy with. Anyway, so, you know, there again, it reminded me, you know, of that. And I told him about that, and he laughed and laughed.
Right.
He said, it wasn't that I wasn't going to cry, but I don't get up very fast.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, it is.
And everyone was waiting to see if the approval was there.
Yeah, the approval is there or not.
That's fantastic.
Anyway, that's good. That's good.
The next question I have for you is, you know, every school, every Baha'i school, or every school in general, has to work within constraints, within frameworks, right? And that can be established by the institutions that are running, for example, the school boards or government systems. In the case of Maxwell, what were the institutions that were helping with decisions and frameworks that were required by the community for developing Maxwell? I know that some of it was academic, some of it might have been state, or in this case, provincial. Some of it were Baha'i institutions. So who were the people, there may have been a board as well, what were the pieces of the puzzle that were helping Maxwell to develop and then to make major decisions?
Well, to be accredited, we had to do certain curricular things that were required by British Columbia. And we had to meet certain standards for the teachers, the individuals that we hired to teach those subjects. Some of it could be content, you know, in relationship. If you're going to teach the chemistry class, you know, you've got to have, you know, so much to be recognized by the government these courses or whatever it is to be able to teach.
Right.
So we had that sort of academic responsibility to see that these people were certified or would qualify for. There are some that were very quasi, like the art and the music. I could bring in someone that just is an artist because of their chosen profession, but if he's recognized as a successful artist, they would be accepted because their level of tradesmanship, so to speak, if you call a plumber in, you want to see that he's certified, he knows what he's doing.
Right.
Or electrician even more so.
So there's a certain standard.
So there is, both from a content point of view or from a academic in the sense of they hold a piece of paper that says that you have a bachelor's in this,
right?
But you also meet the required 5 courses, to be able to teach.
Right.
So that was there in a number of areas, and Dan Vinecore kind of checked those things off that we can get this one qualified and so on.
For the academic standards for the province of British Columbia.
That's right. Okay, so we had those type of regulatory type things, and we had the other type of regulatory things in the sense of being allowed to not only teach but to be paid for that service. Because this person came from Wyoming in the United States, or came from Belgium,
right.
And so on. And so they needed a special visa to stay. And the criteria basically was, you want this person to do that, and why not use a Canadian for that?
Right.
And so if you're doing something that we do not have, it's on the list as a critical asset, in other words. So if a person is coming over and they're taking a teacher's job,
yes,
and there's teachers looking for jobs that are Canadian, and this one is not a Canadian, then we've got a problem.
I see.
Okay, so that kind of fell along with, some of them were shared, like Dan Vinecore
right.
looked after this, but most of those fell in the volunteer area. Okay, room and board we could get away with.
Yeah,
we could talk to them, and we had to develop relationships with the different offices of the government. But then some, he says, this is not going to fly. And so we would say, well, you can work for 3 months on a visitor's visa. We won't give you any money. You can have a board and room. You can eat with the kids, and you can sleep in some of the facilities that we had, dorms, or even in the volunteer house.
Yeah, got a volunteer.
Yeah, and we even had some that drove their campers up, and plugged in.
Right, to spend some time.
What
other institutions were part of the decision making? For example, Baha'i institutions were the school itself is owned by the NSA of Canada.
Right.
Was there an NSA board that was, and were you meeting with them regularly? How did that look?
It was as expected. The NSA appointed a school board.
Yes.
And it met regularly. I'm not sure whether it wasn't every month.
The NSA also appointed one of the members of the NSA to serve on that board.
That's true.
That person became like a liaison.
Yes.
As well, they expected Ray to send regular written reports of the activities at the school, and of course they got all the minutes of the
And
school
the
committee.
financial reports, which the controller was
Was part of
he,
that.
That went to the
he went
NSA.
directly to the NSA, and then she said, Dan would communicate to me. I would include his information, and she could the recruitment and so on, dormitories. So I would get these and I would consolidate them, and then I would present them to the. If we had any questions, we'd bring, the person that is responsible, the supervisor or whoever,
Right.
to consult with them,
To the committee.
So yes, there was a committee,
Yeah.
and it kind of grew in its responsibility and defining things that would take school board approval, and those that were my responsibility to delegate or do,
Right.
as such. So that was a simple structure. The NSA owned it. They were to be kept informed through the school board.
Of which a member of the NSA was a
and
member of the school board,
NSA was
and it would meet every
Right.
few months or something of that nature.
mhm,
And then reports were going out regularly from you to them.
Right.
right.
Okay.
And then the NSA also sent an auditor
Yeah.
every year to go over the books and
Beautiful,
sign off
yeah.
on them. And so he was an outside contract person with
Yes.
the NSA. You were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that really, when from the beginning of the school, each department head was responsible, and they had their mandate. They knew what their job was, and the heads of department, the team, met on a weekly basis. That would be Ray, the controller, the vice principal, the director of residence, and our nurse was involved with that, and later our counselor was involved with that. So that was a regular team meeting,
Wonderful.
reporting, discussing, consulting on certain issues in each department, and then the regular school. It was called a committee, I think, not a was it a board? The board or the committee. I'm
School
not sure.
committee.
School committee, I think.
Yeah.
So we all knew our jobs.
Yes.
The NSA was not their job to run the school on a day-to-day basis, that they didn't have time to do that. So I think they depended on the school to function, and with the things that had to be decided by the committee or the school board, then that was brought there.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
As students, we were, of course, we weren't privy to this level of detail. We weren't part of these meetings. I don't know how many of us even knew that there was a school board or how it worked or how it functioned, right? We were under the impression that it was the staff that were there, the team, the administrators, the Johnsons, etc., that would make unilateral decisions, that they had complete autonomy and complete freedom to decide in real time, probably on the spot. This is the way we thought of it as youth. What I want to ask is...
They're called dictators, I guess.
Right. Well, we never thought of you that way. So what I want to know is you see, you had another layer of constraint because most schools answer to a school board that is a government-based system, and maybe that's essentially it. With the Maxwell International High School, because it was owned by the NSA and there was a school board that was it was based more in the NSA, I assume, than the school boards that might be secular schools. What were some of the constraints? I know that that's always a big challenge. What were some of the constraints of that framework? In other words, what things could you do and what things required approval and consultation?
Naturally, I could hire and fire. Okay, so you get right up to the biggies.
Yes.
And then when there were other things that I was that a school needs to have and help them carry out their jobs, then they would go to that particular supervisor. Like if it had to do with residents, they would go, and she, LaNelma, would then consult with them what the issue is, and sometimes consult with her group, and then bring it to, the principal. And then I would basically see that we, I agreed with the purpose.
Yes.
It didn't infringe on other departments and their desires. And it was in keeping with generally, our purposes for existence. And if it helped kids, if it was safe, like they wanted the family group, for example. Okay, let's take a reality check. So the director of resident writes, a page and says that the dorm parents want the authority to take their dorm off campus, for a service project, every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock for 3 hours.
Right.
Okay. So they're going off campus. So immediately, parents' permission, liability, So we kind of go through the checklist to see how these are going to be taken care of. So if someone calls from Africa and says, I want to speak to my child, well, your child's, on this island.
Right.
And we have no contact with them. We didn't have cell phones.
Right.
And so on. So we have to be aware of these things. And so eventually, we handle it, one individual by other, but now then all dorm parents want that authority.
Right.
Well, it's good, but now we've got to have the transportation available, on Saturday morning, every Saturday morning, and it denies the rest of the school access. Or we have to go out and hire separately. So you get into finances, you get into staff,
Right.
So a simple thing like, can I take these kids out here? It balloons into an institutional activity.
Right.
Where the whole school benefits.
Right.
And so on. So you see how administratively, I think that was the question. That
what were the constraints? Right.
Yeah, the constraints. Well, they weren't all written down. Don't do this without permission. I mean, but it's on the positive side. Any authorized use of school facilities has to be attained at the principal's office.
Right.
Okay. So those things developed over the first few years to where, something called the handbook, was born.
Right.
And then it changed. It's just like you hear all the time, there was a school shooting. Immediately, everybody looks at the safety in the school handbook. Are we liable?
Right.
What can we do to do better?
Right.
And so they're always re-looking at, is this the best way to handle this?
Right.
And so on.
Now, were there any things that, and I know this is a sensitive subject, were there any constraints that that you felt would impede the progress of the school itself? Whether that's government constraints, whether that's the delay that it takes to make a decision because you're dealing with a board as opposed to an individual person who can work on that, or what? In other words, if you could go back in time and make that system more smooth, what would that look like?
Well,
Can I say
I was going to say
something?
I can say some big ones, but
Well, the constraints that began, I'm not sure when, but there were questions when a student was asked to leave the school. And from, I don't know, perhaps the NSA, because a parent would call the NSA. And the work that went into this decision, if a student was asked to leave the school because of the standard that was expected, and the parents and the students and everybody knew the standard, and we didn't want to lower the standards because everything was within the Baha'i law, you know, considering drugs and alcohol and sex and so on. And that was never taken lightly. Parents were consulted, the student was consulted,
Yes.
the dorm parents, the team consulted. And then if someone was asked to leave because this student needs to be looked after, but this entire student body needs to be looked after too.
Right.
So if a student was asked to leave, they were given an outline of things they should do and work on in order to, if they want to come back, it's not just accepted you can come back, but you can apply to come back again, and that you have to have worked on this issue and done certain things, see an outside counselor,
Yes.
work with an assembly member, or even, family counseling, whatever. But we have had some students who did leave and came back to the school and had really worked hard to correct their issues and remained in the school very successfully, contributing to the school, as well as getting a wonderful education and happy for themselves.
Yeah.
We have those examples. But when the NSA began to question each thing like that, it became like the team had no authority to make that decision because they weren't privy to all of the things that had happened.
Right.
And it was almost like the feeling that we got personally was that they didn't trust the school authorities to make the right decision. And it turns out that it was the right decision for that student who came back to us later and said, "Thank you.
Right.
You helped me to turn my life around." And we had that right up to, and dorm parents had that. Dorm parents had kids coming back to them. And, we had kids coming back to us, and still they're coming back to us and saying, "Thank you. I'm a counselor now because of what you did."
I have 4 of my dear friends, a few from my class, one from a class above, and one from two grades underneath me, that were asked to leave by the administration of Maxwell because of things that they had, done that was just under the
Attitude
standard,
and so on.
even beyond attitude, actions and whatnot. And the 4 that I'm thinking of right now, when they came back with an invigorated spirit, more powerful, more strong. The standards were kept high, and it was unwavering, at least during those years, and I recall that. So I know that there must have been some challenges there, and we have to be obviously, and I know we talked off camera about we always remain very obedient and loving and such with our institutions, no question. At the same time, there may be feelings around that, that hey, we've got a good handle on the situation, and we should be trusted to hold the standards at this level because it is what's going to create that constancy in the future.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's really valuable for future generations as we move forward and we advance. Did you have anything else to add to that, Dr. Johnson? In other words, and here, let me rephrase it. Let me ask you this. And we're doing okay on time. Okay. What was the Maxwell administration? That means yourself, the staff, the administration that were there on campus.
Yeah.
What were you able to do freely? And what was it that you were not able to do freely, and there was some constraint, whether that was consulting with the board about what were those that almost bullet pointed out for me?
Yeah.
Or as close as you can.
Well, one of the pluses and minuses is that generally, a lot of the successes that trickled down over the years and gave, strength to the Maxwell School was that we were able to establish a lot of trust and confidence, and in the school environment, to where parents and LaNelma, mostly in her responsibilities of serving in the residential side, would hear from the parents, and they may be concerned about something, but the conversation ends with, "I trust you. I know this is a difficult job, but I'm their mother, and we're far away, and I just need this assurance that my child is going to be
Safe.
yeah, well, not necessarily as much as safe, but that that he's getting what he needs with the challenges he's facing,
Right.
And of course, we do always say we do the best that we can, trying to keep in touch with you, and then looking at the negative side of what happened, or after we were gone. And this is nothing against the people that were there, but it's just something that, little things were being taken out piece by piece, and one of them happened to be the same issue, is that there was the lack of communication, and then within a few years, the removal of the dorm parent system, and so that whole thing was gone.
Right.
So not only was there less communication, but all of a sudden there was no one really there to look after my child. So a piece of the puzzle, so to speak, was now missing.
Right.
And then having that trickle down, as parents became aware of that, and kids starting to not work, but to work out, or whatever you call it.
Push the boundaries.
Yeah, started
Yes.
pushing the boundaries.
Sure.
That's a good way to say it. And some of the boundaries were really should have been dealt with much more seriously, I guess. So when this started snowballing, and the support systems to look at that and take care of that were gone, and you can't have just this individual responsible for all of this stuff, and so the crack widens, and more kids were falling through the crack.
Right.
And because of that, naturally, enrollments are going down. Enrollments are down, finances, income is down.
Right.
So eventually it just started reflecting right back. And then other measures were being taken, and different ideas were flowing, and chaos started to seek into the school, and so it was a difficult time in the future. It's no one person's fault as such,
right?
No institutional at fault, but little things that were going on just were not working,
right?
And it had a negative effect, and then eventually, and I of course moved to a different category here about closure of the school. But that's what started. It started when you start pulling things out for whatever reason. This was working. Now it's gone, and there's nothing catching. So the uniqueness of Maxwell and the whole vision and principles of Maxwell were being weakened, maybe even disappearing, you know. And so the structure of the school started coming apart. And then there was no uniqueness about Maxwell. The things that you and your colleagues, you know, feel now and felt then, trying to reestablish.
Yeah.
And if you can't reestablish this on top of that,
Yes.
okay? And so you have to rebuild that. So the structure has to be changed. And I'm not willing to say that the structure was perfect,
Right.
you know, and I'm just showing you a few things, you know, and I've got some
You mean
quotes here.
the original structure? Let's say the first
Yeah, because
5 years
the
or
first
so, or
the first
8
3 years, it itself changed.
Right.
You know,
It was growing and evolving,
it was
developing.
growing and evolving, and we were doing a lot of consultation and staff development.
Yes.
We mentioned about, you know, things like the Virtues Project to better understand about the Virtues Project and responsibilities there. There's if I can, read a quote
Please.
from
And
Baha'u'llah,
I have a quote.
and then
after
I'll
as
give you
well.
some. Yeah. Baha'u'llah has announced that no matter how far the world of humanity may advance in material civilization, it is nevertheless in need of spiritual virtues and the bounties of God. The spirit of man is not illumined and quickened through material sources. It is not resuscitated by investigating phenomena of the world of matter. The spirit of man is in need of the protection of the Holy Spirit. Just as he advances by progressive stages from the mere physical world of being into the intellectual realm, so must he develop upward in moral attributes and spiritual graces. In the process of this attainment, he is ever in need of the bestowals of the Holy Spirit. Material development may be likened into the glass of a lamp, whereas divine virtues and spiritual susceptibilities are the light within the glass. Maxwell's focus was here. Here is the material. Mathematics and learning that, to put that into deeds is almost impossible. You add the spirit of man, the susceptibilities, mathematics comes along with it to enable man to receive the protection of the Holy Spirit. And when you don't pay attention to that and meet the needs of students in that, the students act out. They need supports that are not available. And so they focus on the material and not on the spiritual. And that's a simplistic way to look at it, but it's also the overreaching purpose of what you are feeling as Maxwell graduates that had the privilege of being involved in the evolution of Maxwell, as we were blessed to be able to be there for that, bringing like-minded people together to give whatever they could to establish this project called the Maxwell International Baha'i School. So that's what controlled me more than anything. And I see a number of sort of failures, if you want to, or what I would do differently than what we were able to do. And one of them had to do with service, which I already pointed out.
Yeah.
And that the House of Justice is telling us right now, the letters coming all say, you know, what we're doing through the 5-year plan, through our cluster development, it all has to do with human development.
Yes.
And you say what you want to say,
I
and
think
then we're going to close
It's
with.
a good time to close. Yeah, we're going to the 1980s.
Okay.
But you know which?
We're going to close with the music, though.
Yes, which
So,
Ray
hurry.
and I say this. We say this quote just about every morning, and it just I always think of Maxwell School. This quote is about the world. The stability. Now I can't think of it. The stability of the structure of world stability and order hath been reared upon and will continue to be sustained by the twin pillars of consultation and compassion.
And you think of it in the terms of Maxwell.
Structure of world stability and order. The structure of stability in Maxwell hath been reared upon and will continue to be sustained by the twin pillars of consultation and compassion. Isn't that amazing?
Thank you.
Okay. So I don't know if you want to keep this on the camera.
It might be the unedited version.
Okay. But LaNelma's going to.
Can you hand me that Bluetooth? Yeah.
That's the one.
So we're gonna play this.
We're going to turn on the Bluetooth.
We
We're
have-
going to close. We're going to get to 19-day feast.
That's right. That's right.
Here's our phone.
Okay. I told LaNelma that I would sing the song, but she thought that this individual that starts the song has a better voice than I do.
Oh, that's impossible.
Uh-huh.
This is. Oh, sorry.
How old are you,
Um,
young?
Let's stop it.
Four.
Wait.
Oh,
This is a little 4-year-old girl, and this is the Boston Baha'i Children's Chorus. And I think they're singing with red grammar, but it's "I Am a Promise."
but that's wise, right? What do you like to do? You like to sing? What do you like to do?
Sing along.
You ready to try to sing? Ready? Sing with me, okay? 1, sing.
I am a promise.
Yes.
I am a possibility. I am a promise.
With a capital P.
With a capital P. I am a great big bundle of potentialities.
And if I listen, let me hear you real loud.
And if I listen, I can hear God's voice. And if I try it,
You help me, mate?
it helped me make the
Real
right
big.
choice. I am a promise
You have
to
to make
be
the right choice.
anything God wants me to be. I am a promise. I am a possibility. I am a promise. With a capital P. I am a great big bundle of potentiality. And if I listen, I can hear God's voice. And if I try it, He'll help me make the right choice. I am a promise to be anything God wants me to be.
Maxwell.
I am a
Yes.
promise to be anything God wants me to be.
That's fantastic.
Okay, gotta go to feast.